Welcome to the parallel event of the 16th UN Conference on Women Strategy to End AIDS by 2030. Please click interpretation at the bottom of the Zoom screen and choose Chinese to listen to simultaneous interpretation in Chinese. Thank you for your participation. 欢迎参加第66届联合国妇女大会平行会议2030年终结艾滋病，请点击 Zoom 屏幕底部 Interpretation 口译，选择 Chinese 中文即可收听中文同声传译。感谢您。好，给到我们的主持人。
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the Beijing Zhenjiang Education Foundation, I am happy to welcome you to our today's event on strategies to end AIDS epidemic by 2030. My name is Alessia, and I am an international volunteer coordinator of Zhenjiang Foundation, and I will be your moderator for the first part of the discussion. This is a parallel event to the United Nations 66th Commission on the Status of Women, and it became possible thanks to Beijing Zhenjiang Education Foundation, formerly known as AIDS Prevention and Education Project for Chinese Youth. The foundation is dedicated to spreading awareness around AIDS among the young people and supporting those impacted by the AIDS epidemic. Since 2006, it has built 1,300 drop-in centers in schools across 80 regions in China, benefiting 30 million teachers, students, and parents. This work has been recognized globally, resulting in the consultative status of the Zhenjiang Foundation with the United Nations Economic and Social Councils since 2019. And we have prepared a brief video to showcase the work Zhenjiang does, which we'll play for you now.
Ending AIDS and protecting youth are the shared responsibility of all humanity. Beijing Zhenjiang Education Foundation is the most influential organization in the field of anti-AIDS in developing countries. We gathered tens of thousands of caring people who provide a long-term commitment to AIDS prevention, education, and public welfare undertakings for women and children. We have developed the social vaccine for sex education against AIDS and reach 1 billion people. In addition, we have widely implemented aid and assistance to help tens of thousands of people who are affected by AIDS. As an organization with special consultative status with United Nations Economic and Social Council, we actively exercise our rights and obligations with UN agencies, provide donations to foreign developing countries, collaborate with international organizations, and participate in international conferences. We also advocate the protection of the rights and interests of women and children in the world. We contribute our years of experiences, wisdom, and strength to help achieve the UN ending AIDS by the year 2030.
Thank you. And let's welcome Emma Chen-Banas, United Nations representative and Chief Administrative Officer of Beijing Zhenjiang Education Foundation. She will dive into Zhenjiang's mission to seek more international partnerships.
Thank you, Ali. Good morning or good evening, everyone. I'm taking a few minutes today on behalf of Zhenjiang Education Foundation to call for opportunities for international partnership with NGOs. China Youth AIDS Education Project was founded in 2006. And in 2014, Beijing Zhenjiang Education was founded. Zhenjiang Education Foundation promotes AIDS prevention and treatments, sexual health, mental health, and traditional culture education. In addition, through the establishment of Love Cottage or drop-in center in schools, Zhenjiang provides teacher training, parents classes, publication of teaching aids, developed curriculums, research, and the support for students in need, and to tens of thousands of teachers, students, and parents. Chanjier developed the youth sexual education and prevention model, which well recognized nationally and globally. In 2016, Michelle Sidibe, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of UNAIDS, affirmed that the experience and the practice of Chanjier in providing AIDS prevention and sex education in school is worth of being replicated around the world. Next slide. Chanjier journey has been the same as the most NGOs, starting from a single idea and then developed into step-by-step with great difficulties. As Ms. Zhang mentioned, she saw the suffering and the helplessness of people with AIDS, which led to the idea of funding the Chinese Youth AIDS Center. From the beginning of one person to tens of millions of participants and beneficiaries nationwide now. How do we do it? What is our success secret sauce? First, persistence. Persistence is fundamental. Our persistence has helped many AIDS patients and their families, engaged many participants, and recruited many volunteers and generous donors. Because of our persistence, we have received national support and recognitions from the United Nations. Second, we have worked tirelessly to promote changes in perceptions and awareness from the individual to the governmental level. AIDS and sex education have been relatively concealed and shy topics in many countries. After years of research, we have tried and found ways to change traditional perception effectively, and also found ways to promote changes in government policies, and also creation of new legislations. Third, we have gained the support of influential members of the community. Because of many famous people in society recognize the mission of Chanjier, they are willing to use their influence to help drive the changes and gain support through their supporters. Fourth, always keep the original intention. Whenever we encounter difficulties or setbacks, we know why we are here and whom we serve. It is to save the lives of many helpless AIDS patients and their families, which is our duty. Next slide. Chanjier calls for giving back to the community. Chanjier, in the early stage of our organization and its growth, has received help from different parties. Now, our organization has grown and is strong. We have expanded from fighting AIDS to focusing on women's, youth, and children's rights and their financial empowerment. We have also grown from the regional to the national level to the United Nations. We are now encouraging international NGOs to partner with us. We are ready. First, we are ready to provide our years of experiences, best practices, and the financial assistance to the organizations that need help in the fighting against AIDS in developing countries in Africa, Asia, and worldwide. Please get in touch with us if your organization needs help and support. Second, we are now also seeking partnership and collaborations with NGOs who share the same vision of supporting women's, youth, and children's rights, and also UN's sustainability goals. Don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Let's share our experiences and the resources. Next. Below is the contact information for Chanjier. I'm looking forward to working together to build a better future. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. So without further ado, let's jump right into the content we have prepared today. And I'm honored to introduce to you one of our keynote speakers for today, Dr. Chen Hong. Dr. Chen has worked at the World Health Organization Regional Office for the Western Pacific. She's a senior researcher at Chinese Center for Disease Prevention and Director of China-US Center for Disease Control and Prevention Program Management Office. So let me invite Dr. Chen.
Thank you for your introduction and the kindly words. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I would like to thank you, Beijing Changer Education Foundation and the UN to provide unique platform for learning, listening, and sharing. The topic will just to end AIDS together for the shared future with global joint efforts. Next slide, please. Thank you. These slides show the shared future among international society in terms of ending AIDS, ending inequity, and ending pandemic. One World Health and SDG goal by 2030 to remind us to make tremendous efforts towards the shared future. It is said that gain new insights through reviewing old material, hopefully by reviewing what I experienced, we can understand and recognize the important role of international cooperation, collaboration in the fighting against HIV/AIDS globally. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide illustrated my journey of HIV/AIDS prevention and control and the COVID-19 response. Thank you. From 1990 up to now, from different perspectives, from different roles, from the university to international project, from WHO country level to region level, from national to provincial, prefecture, county, and township level, from fighting HIV/AIDS to COVID response, through multilateral, bilateral, and public-private partnership international collective platforms to address the challenges, overcome obstacles, and serve for member states, women, youth, and vulnerable groups towards the three ends. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide shows some the practice of HIV/AIDS and STD prevention and control at international platform by learning, listening, translating knowledge into practice, employing the international tools focused on child, adolescents, and youth. For example, we conducted reproductive health research methods international training workshop, participant preventive education against HIV/AIDS UNESCO region training in Philippines with the leader from the Division of School Health and Health Education Ministry of Education at that time. Actually Mr. Liao Wenke and Ms. As spiritual fellow, visited the Gladstone City Council in Australia for health promotion. One look is worth 1,000 words, seeing in believing. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. China-UK HIV/AIDS prevention and care project is one of the earliest international projects supported by the Chinese government to develop interventions among the population with high-risk behavior. It innovatively applied successful international approaches and experience of HIV/AIDS prevention and control and adapted them to align with the local situation, offered replicable intervention models for national integrated HIV/AIDS response in China. Let's see some critical elements and good practices for the innovation application in pilot province in China. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide actually shows this project innovatively applied successful international approaches and experience and adapted them to align with Chinese politics, economic, social, society, and cultural situation. For instance, social science involvement, international technical tools applications such as situation analysis of sexual health, faith-based intervention, and conducted interventions in closed settings by providing training material for public security and justice personnel. This project covered 83 counties, districts, and target groups total up to 264.9 thousand in Sichuan and Yunnan province. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide shows some efforts made as international technical officer in WHO country office, the support from UN agency at country level for HIV/AIDS prevention and control closely align with Chinese planning and the strategy for HIV/AIDS response under governmental leadership. Promoted role of NGOs and the people living with HIV/AIDS made collective efforts under the UN same group, actually with members of UN same group on HIV/AIDS. Participant, WHO, the technical document development and translate into Chinese, implemented and coordinate 3x5 initiative at country levels, support for free one-care implementation by providing technical assistance to Global Fund several rounds for tracking progress, identifying barriers, problem solving, and contributing measurable impact. Next slide, please. International cooperation on HIV/AIDS is an integral part of China's HIV/AIDS response. China MSD HIV/AIDS partnership is the first large-scale public-private partnership on HIV/AIDS in China at that time. The project developed integrated HIV/AIDS response in the area of health education, PMTCT, which is a prevention for of mother to child transmission, a provider initiative testing and counseling, international cooperation mechanism, poverty alleviation, capacity building of resilience from nature disaster, and gradually replicated its experience to other areas, now providing useful experience and good practice for national response. Next slide, please. In terms of ending pandemic, we also need to take preventive measures and take actions in the local context. Do right thing, do things right at the right time. This slide shared some priorities to help member states cope with the new phase of pandemic and take necessary actions with a balancing accurate response with programmatic delivery as applicable and appropriate. New normal tools to end pandemic. Next slide, please. I would like to conclude with an African proverb for our joint efforts. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Together for the shared future, towards the shared goal. Thank you for your listening. Over from my end, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chen, for your speech and the valuable insights. And now, moving along to our session, please welcome Dr. Harvey Zadine. After a distinguished career in the US government as a political appointee of President Jimmy Carter, Dr. Harvey Zadine is now a Beijing-based columnist for several media outlets. He is a former vice president of ABC TV, and he currently serves as non-resident research fellow of the think tank Center for China and Globalization, and a senior advisor of Tsinghua University National Image Research Center, specializing in city branding. So the floor is yours, Dr. Harvey.
Hello and greetings from Austria in the heart of Europe. Not far from here, a terrible situation is unfolding that affects everyone involved, but especially women and children. We hope and we pray that the situation resolves itself soon. It wasn't a very happy International Women's Day, but we hope that the rules-based international order helps bring a speedy resolution. My name is Harvey Zoden, and I'm an American who's happily lived much of this century in Beijing, watching the amazing progress that's been made on so many fronts and which have unfolded at China speed. I've worked in the administration of Jimmy Carter, served in the UN here in Vienna, and been an eyewitness to history as the vice president of ABC TV. I remember when AIDS first was identified and have known people who live with AIDS and have died from it. I've worked on public service announcements, free commercials carried nationally over the ABC TV network in the 80s and 90s with the US government, the Harvard School of Public Health, and others. Although AIDS can be controlled by medications, the gulf between rich and poor nations is as vast as the Pacific Ocean. Now, 40 years, 4 decades since AIDS was identified, it's shocking that with all the scientific advances that have occurred, up to and including the ongoing fight against COVID-19, there's still no cure or vaccine against this terrible condition. That's why we urgently need all nations of our planet to join together in a global alliance to stop AIDS in its tracks by 2030. I'm actually amazed that we seem to lack the global will to get this done. The great statesman Lord Palmerston famously said that nations have no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. Certainly, the human right of health and wellness is a permanent interest of all countries and peoples. I know that many nations and international organizations have been trying, including the UN's World Health Organization, UN AIDS, the Gates Foundation, and many others too numerous to mention. But the bottom line is that there is still no cure. So we must redouble our efforts now. From where I sit, I'm saddened that not enough funding and research have been yet committed to this noble cause. Is this an impossible dream? Are we all merely Don Quixotes tilting at windmills? Absolutely not. How can I be sure that the goal is within our grasp? That 2030 is an achievable target. I take hope from the Cold War, when the US and USSR were literally at each other's throats. And in 1962, we almost committed nuclear suicide during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Given what's going on in this region even now, I think about that many times each day, but I still retain my optimism. I keep thinking about what Dr. Albert Einstein said when someone asked him what weapons would be used in World War III. This great thinker said he didn't know, but that he was sure World War IV would be fought with sticks and with stones. Frankly, I think he was overly optimistic. Despite this, I take great comfort in one of humanity's greatest medical achievements, the elimination of the age-old scourge of smallpox, a disease that since antiquity had afflicted hundreds of millions from Roman and Chinese emperors on down. A disease which killed 300 million people in the 20th century alone before it was finally conquered in 1977. This success was only because of the active cooperation of scientists in the US and USSR, led by US CDC scientist Donald Henderson and Soviet Deputy Health Minister Dmitry Venediktov. In some ways, smallpox was an easier nut to crack. This was because a vaccine had been developed by Dr. Edward Jenner at the end of the 18th century, and the Soviet-US collaboration 2 centuries later was merely to sufficiently fund and arrange logistics to administer the millions of doses that led to global smallpox eradication. In the case of AIDS, there is as yet no magic bullet, but science has advanced so much, I'm sure that where there's a will, there's definitely a way. I also take comfort in the fact that even though relations between China and the US are at a low point, we know that the two countries can work together. In 2013, during a summit between President Xi and Obama, President Xi proposed a new model of great power relations. And together, in 2015, their joint leadership is what got the nearly impossible accomplished, the Paris Climate Agreement that's going to spare our planet from a different kind of catastrophe. I'm reminded of the quote attributed to George Bernard Shaw, that some people see things as they are and ask why. I dream dreams that never were and ask why not. Working together, we will find a way to defeat AIDS. Thank you.
Thank you for the amazing sharing, Dr. Zadin. We can definitely learn a lot from your rich experience. And next, let me invite my good friend and highly talented Joseph Olivier Mendo. Joseph is a co-founder of China-Africa Youth Federation and a doctoral candidate in international politics at Peking University, where he studies China-Africa relations. Joseph holds awards for Chinese and German language proficiency. He served as the African Youth Head Delegation for large international events, such as China-Africa Youth Festival in 2020, the United Nations Youth Forum in the Middle East, International Youth Summit in Tokyo, and the International Youth Forum on South-South Cooperation in Pakistan. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And distinguished guest and colleague, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. It is a great honor to participate in such forum. I will be representing the African youth, sharing some insights about ending AIDS by reducing inequality and ending discrimination, as well as challenging when it comes to ending AIDS. So first of all, I would like to say that the HIV epidemic is far more than a health issue. The HIV epidemic thrives on inequality, insecurity, stigma, and discriminations. marginalization, criminalization, and exclusion. That's why the struggle to end AIDS epidemic continues to be inseparable from the struggle for women's rights and from the struggle to end all forms of discriminations. So we need to change our society so that everyone's life is considered precious and valuable, and that human rights are respected for both genders. The HIV epidemic is fueled by inequalities. There is a need for urgent evidence-informed and transformative actions to unlock social enablers and to end social, economic, racial, and gender barriers, which includes punitive laws, policies, and practices, stigma and discrimination based on HIV status and gender identity, as well as other human rights violations that create and deepen the inequalities that perpetuate the HIV pandemic. Bad policies, laws, and harmful social norms are having negative impact on women and girls. Worldwide, AIDS-related disease remain the biggest killer of women aged 15 to 49 years old. In sub-Saharan Africa, big numbers of new infections are among adolescents and girls aged 15 to 19 years old. Young women aged to 15 to 24 years are twice as likely to be living with HIV than men. So we must change the landscape for women and girls. To end AIDS by 2030, we must put a stop to gender-based violence, inequality, and insecurity, and ensure that women and girls, like men and boys, have equal opportunities in education, employment, and health. Furthermore, there are some lessons from the HIV and COVID-19 that have shown the entire world that unless all countries, communities, and individuals get access to the benefits of science and technology without stigma and discriminations, or even benefit from fair taxation and equitable distribution of wealth and are respected in all their diversity, epidemics will continue to rage. The stigma and discrimination, the marginalization and criminalization of communities, and a lack of access to health, education, and other essential services have pushed us on off track, actually, of the Sustainable Development Goals target of ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. COVID-19 has disrupted progress even further. In a recent Global Fund survey of more than 30 countries, HIV testing across all facilities surveyed fell around 41%. As vaccinations against COVID-19 increase across Asia, Europe, and North America, many people are welcoming hugs from loved ones. Restaurants and beaches are reopening, and return to a sense of normalities in many countries is beckoning. In much of developed countries, the prospect of eliminating COVID-19 as a public health threat is on the horizon. Yet, the pandemic remains devastating in many of the developing countries and communities. So inequalities is usually the biggest hurdle to clear in the race to end diseases. Even before COVID-19, we're now on the track to meet the global targets for 2020, agreed in the 2016 Political Declaration on HIV. And with the disruptions to health system and the HIV services delivery caused by COVID-19, we now face the sobering prospect of losing some of the hard-won gains achieved over the last 20 years. These missed targets have come at high costs, meaning around 690,000 people died of AIDS-related death in 2020, and there were 1.5 million new HIV infections, 3 times the targets that the world had set itself in 2016 as part of its ambition to get on track to end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. So a little more than 40 years ago, the first cases of AIDS were reported. Over 77 million people have become infected with HIV, and more than 34 million have died from AIDS-related illnesses worldwide. So today, HIV, which still kills almost 700,000 people every year, is largely a disease of the most marginalized, but it could have been much worse. 2 decades ago, and after sustained campaigns by activists, the international community finally came together, determined to make HIV treatment, prevention, and care available to everyone, not just the rich. And it was mostly because the drugs saved lives and rejuvenated communities in rich countries, while people in the poorer countries continues to die from AIDS-related illnesses in massive numbers. So we faced many challenges before, but we know that if we can make smarter investments, take better actions by addressing discriminations and inequalities that HIV infections, and prevent people from accessing services, we can regain the lost ground and accelerate progress. In other words, we must take urgent actions to end the inequalities that drive the HIV. We can do that by ensuring rapid access to better science for all, by removing discriminatory laws that leave people behind because of their gender identity or else, and by changing policies that exacerbate existing structural and social inequities. To get there, we can get some inspiration from the courage and determination of those who fought for equitable access to HIV prevention, treatment, and care 2 decades ago. To get back on track and end AIDS as a public health threat, once and for all, will take more money and better science, but more importantly, it will take unswerving commitment to tackle the discrimination and inequalities that fuel the epidemic. A little more than 40 years after the discovery of AIDS, unprecedented efforts and remarkable progress have been made in the fight against AIDS. A global decline in the new infections was achieved in 1997, and a decline in AIDS death was also achieved in 2005. In 2014, UNAIDS set the goal to end the AIDS epidemic by 2030. However, controlling the spread of the global AIDS pandemic comes with a variety of challenges. First of all, the current prevention strategies cannot fully control the challenges posed by the epidemic, with the severe outbreak occurring in local areas and higher risk behavior groups. Many people may cause more serious transmission because they do not know the infection status, and we're talking here about adolescents and the elderly who are vulnerable groups. Second, the concealment of same-sex behavior, the prevalence of unsafe sexual behaviors, and the widespread use of social software, the abuse of new synthetic drugs, and the frequent population movements increase the risk of HIV infections and the complexity of prevention and control. Third, the number of surviving infections continues to increase, and antiviral therapy delays the survival of infected people, which leads to the aging of infected people and the increasing of mortality rate. Fourth, the issue of drug resistance caused by the widespread use of the different therapeutic drugs, the pressure of the follow-up treatment and the new drugs development, and the challenges in developing vaccines. Fifth, gender inequality, as I mentioned earlier, causing women and girls to face barriers in accessing HIV and sexual reproductive health services. And last, the global pandemic of COVID-19, which has brought new variables and challenges to the goals of ending AIDS. So although there are many challenges with government increased investment in basic AIDS research and control of the epidemic, the continuous development of new drugs, the gradual improvement of detection technologies, the emergence of the use of new technology, etc., all that will contribute to making the vision for the realization of the global controls of AIDS epidemic possible. So we believe that through our unremitting efforts, the AIDS epidemic will eventually be completely controlled. I thank you all for the listening.
That was a truly motivating and powerful address to the youth, Joseph. I guess we all should be as proactive in volunteering and spreading the awareness as you. Thank you so much. And now let me introduce Ms. Lee Xin-du, who will be our moderator for the second part of the event. Welcome, Lee Xin.
Thank you. Let's move on to Emily Wong. Emily Wang is a 17 years old Chinese international student from Beijing. She is an outspoken advocate for human rights, participating in her school's Gay Street Alliance and leading the Human Rights Initiative Club. Emily created an interactive art textbook, Let Me Draw the Vocabulary, in hopes of advancing the sustainable development goal of quality education. She donated copies of her book to several underdeveloped rural elementary schools in China. Now I will pass it over to Emily to share her talk.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Xiaoyu, or Emily Wang. I'm a 17-year-old international student from Beijing, China, and I currently attend high school in New Jersey. It's a true honor for me to be here today, and I hope what I'm about to share can shed light on the younger generation's experience when it comes to learning about and tackling the HIV and AIDS pandemic. AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and HIV, human immunodeficiency virus infection, two almost simple-looking acronyms, have wreaked destruction across the globe, destroying lives, ending lives, and spreading like wildfire. According to the World Health Organization, in 2020, 3.7 million were living with HIV, and 680,000 died of HIV worldwide. But these numbers are only approximations, because 1 in 7 people who are HIV positive do not know it and require immediate testing. And with regards to AIDS, around 36.3 million have died due to it since the pandemic started in the late 20th century. I could go on and list statistic after statistic, but I'm sure many of you are aware of them. The severity of HIV and AIDS is clearer than ever. Of course, I do not want these harsh truths to cast a shadow on the progress that has been made to alleviate this crisis. Generally, HIV and AIDS are no longer death sentences in developed countries. Millions are in treatment, and extensive research continues to be done. Nevertheless, we cannot be satisfied until everybody in both developing and developed countries can receive the healthcare they need to lead healthy lives. Although there are many ways that HIV and AIDS can be spread, such as through sharing needles from mother to baby during birth and during blood transfusions, I will be focusing on sexual transmission and how we can seek solutions to combat HIV and AIDS on that front. To begin, I want to spotlight a central reason why HIV and AIDS are so prevalent among youths: a lack of sex education. Personally, I have learned nothing about these STIs in school. I was ignorant of the horrific consequences of HIV and AIDS until I watched a TV show called It's a Sin, which is about the 1980s London AIDS epidemic. However, this TV series was inadequate in educating me about HIV and AIDS, to say the least, when compared with a concrete curriculum that schools can provide. My previous lack of knowledge stunned me at first, but eventually motivated me to survey my American peers about their schools' sex education programs. I was curious to see how their schools worked to address HIV and AIDS, or if they addressed them at all. The responses I received shocked me even further, but were comparable to some of my own experiences. My roommate at school is from Central Florida, and she has never received any education at school concerning sexual welfare. None. When I asked her what she learned about HIV or AIDS as she was growing up, she informed me that the only time she even heard about AIDS from an adult was when her pastor homophobically joked that gay stands for, quote, "got AIDS yet?" From there, 2 students who attend a high school in Connecticut told me that their school, a private institution, dissolved its sex education program a few years prior for remodeling, and that they have no idea when it might start up again. Due to this program's temporary removal, it's probable that these 2 students, who are currently sophomores, will not receive any sex education during their respective high school careers. My high school does a better job than these examples, but is still far from perfect. At my school, freshmen, 14 to 15-year-olds, receive a semester-long health course that teaches about nutrition and contraceptives. Unfortunately, this program does not include anything concerning HIV and AIDS. I surveyed a classmate who was taught this program her freshman year and asked how she learned about HIV and AIDS if it wasn't taught in class. She replied that she learned through YouTube and social media. An additional deficiency of my school's program is that if there are new incoming students who aren't freshmen, then they miss out on learning about sex education entirely, unless they learned about it at their previous school. Needless to say, there is much room for improvement. I know many believe developed countries execute sex education better than developing ones, but the inadequacy of sex education isn't limited to developing countries. We're all in the same boat because no country has achieved a perfectly informative sex education program at present. Sex education is crucial to ending the HIV and AIDS pandemic. Without the concrete information that sex education provides, youths explore their sexuality without the necessary precautions. If someone isn't knowledgeable about sexually transmitted infections and other risks of being sexually active, they are blindly engaging in behavior that could be dangerous for both parties. For example, suppose somebody unknowingly has an STI and is ill-equipped to pinpoint and address it. In that case, they could continue participating in sexual acts and spread the STI to later partners. Plus, if accurate information concerning HIV, AIDS, and other STIs isn't taught in schools, youths could have misconceptions regarding how they are transmitted. As a case in point, there's a myth that HIV is a gay disease. While unprotected anal sex is one of the riskiest sexual behaviors for contracting and transmitting HIV or AIDS, it's by no means the only form of transmission. A foundational and thorough course about sexual health would teach students that HIV and AIDS are spread through vaginal fluids as well and are not limited to queer men. This misunderstanding about queer men is extremely destructive because not only does it exacerbate homophobia, but it also gives heterosexual youths a false sense of security and scares the LGBTQ+ community from coming forward and getting tested if they have STI-related symptoms. Even if technological advances make STI testing affordable and easily accessible in the future, it is shame that stops people from coming forward and seeking solutions. It is shame based on misconceptions that prevent people from protecting themselves and their sexual partners. Beyond the flaws of sexual education, another factor that contributes to the HIV and AIDS crisis is the deep-seated social stigma surrounding sex. In my experience, children rarely talk about sex with their parents and family in China. It's a topic that's considered taboo and avoided like the plague. Certainly, this is not confined to Asia. People typically don't talk about sexual activity and well-being at home or address sex as a natural part of the human experience. This stigma expresses itself in what's called slut shaming, which is when people engaging in sex get shunned, a lack of sex education programs around the world, and discouragement when reaching out for professional help to treat STIs. Because youths do not speak of sex with their parents and have limited resources at school, many learn the bulk of what they know about sex from peers in the forms of crude jokes and inaccurate information rather than solid, research-proven facts. Plus, those who are affected with STIs face a sharp decline in mental health compared to their healthy counterparts, which, in the worst-case scenario, may manifest in the forms of self-hatred, mental disease, and substance abuse, as a 2019 study led by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, or the NCBI, discovered. While a lack of sex education and social stigma are barriers, many practical solutions can be applied globally. First, transparent quality sex education should be provided in all high schools for each grade every year. This consistency will ensure that everybody remains informed of risks and safety measures regarding sexual activity. A solid basis of sexual awareness establishes responsibility, shatters people's harmful assumptions about STIs such as HIV and AIDS, and works against the effects of our instilled social stigma towards sex. So what should sex education reform look like, and how can we improve it? First, boys and girls are typically separated during sex education. However, separating students based on gender feeds into the harmful stigma surrounding sex because it promotes the idea that there's something embarrassing to be concealed. To transparency, teaching both genders together can establish and a habit of critical communication regarding and during sex. In sex education lessons, teachers can also have students write their questions about sexual safety on slips of paper, put them in a box anonymously, and then answer them as a class. By allowing questions to be anonymous, students feel more comfortable asking all the questions that might have felt awkward to ask in front of their peers and take away more from the class. Another method to enhance sex education is creating health and wellness committees with students who organize and lead seminars with the support of teachers. Sometimes students feel uneasy when talking about sex with adults. However, if small groups of mostly students can gather to discuss sexual well-being, the topic will seem much more approachable, even if attendance is mandatory. Instead of teachers talking down to or at students during typical sex education, peer education promotes dialogue because it's in the form of a discussion, not a lecture. 1 to 2 health teachers should attend these student-led seminars to fact-check the information that's provided and to ensure there's no resistance from the student body to the peer leaders. Schools can also help support their students by building communities that prioritize mental health, because doing so can psychologically support youth if they have STIs and don't know how to cope with the situation. By providing students with supportive, confidential counselors at schools, students can speak about experiences they are unready to talk to their families about. Outside of education, there must be increased contraceptive availability. Condoms, for instance, help in not only greatly reducing unwanted pregnancies, but also harmful STIs, even if they are not 100% effective. I know what I am about to say may sound controversial, but I am positive it has the power to decrease the spread of STIs. Condom availability programs, or CAPs, began in the 1990s and increased sexual safety by providing free condoms in school health centers for youths. Some high schools in America already rely on CAPs to ensure students will be sexually safe. I know that some, especially parents, will be concerned that providing teenagers with free condoms will increase STI spread by encouraging sexual behavior. However, the late teens are when people typically begin having sex and begin exploring their sexuality. Thus, if teenagers will be engaging in sexual activity, which is normal, why not provide them with the means to do it safely? According to the NCBI, schools that distribute condoms do not see an increase in sexual activity for both sexes. Thus, CAPs are a worthy investment for all high schools. For contraceptives themselves, I believe that it is crucial for condom companies to provide resources about STIs for their customers. This objective can be achieved if condom boxes have a QR code that users can scan to read about STIs, how they are transmitted, what they look like, etc. Thus, if one is experiencing STI-like symptoms, they can go to the code and go immediately to a reliable resource, rather than jumping to Google and reading from a misleading site. To ensure young condom users have access to trustworthy information about STIs in schools, nurses' offices can also provide physical pamphlets. For instance, at my school's health center, there's a small rack of pamphlets that target topics such as how to have safe sex and what to do when one has an STI. These two solutions are both reliable and informative, providing youths with a safety net, so they know where to go, either the QR code on their condom box or the rack of pamphlets at school, in case they enter a sticky situation. From there, youths can successfully find solutions and treatments with less panic and confusion. All of the solutions I have just listed center around a common theme: the essential cultural shift towards openness to destigmatize sexual activity. A cultural change is naturally a slow one, but I am confident there will be a decrease in STIs among youth through time, consistency, and commitment to solutions like the ones I just listed. The status quo may seem extremely dire at times, but I want to end my speech on a hopeful note. My solutions are only the tip of the iceberg, and together we can promote systems that become a new standard for our multinational culture. By actively shifting our society to becoming more transparent and sex positive, youth will be prepared and have guidance when they explore their sexuality. In turn, this will keep them safer and bring us one step closer to ending the HIV and AIDS pandemic by 2030. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing your insightful experience with us. Finally, I'm honored to introduce Yingjun Zhang, who is the Director of China Youth AIDS Prevention Education Project Office and Chairman of Beijing Changer Education Foundation. As a mother, Yingjun could not bear to see many women and children suffering inequality and harm, so she left her stable job for 16 years. She devoted herself to protecting and empowering women and children and promoted many policy changes and people's deep-rooted ideas. She has influenced many people and helped the development and growth of vulnerable women and children. Tens of millions of people have benefited. Let's welcome Yingjun.
Ending AIDS starts with protecting adolescents. Since AIDS was discovered in 1981, it has been a worldwide epidemic for more than 4 decades. 77.5 million people have been infected with HIV, and 34.7 million have died of AIDS-related diseases. AIDS prevention and treatment remains a severe public health issue facing the world today. The political declaration on ending the AIDS epidemic by 2030 was adopted at the 2017 United Nations General Assembly. Although great strides in AIDS prevention and treatment have been made around the world, we are still far from ending the AIDS epidemic. Moreover, the continuous spread of the COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected AIDS prevention and treatment, school education, and inequality elimination. At present, teenagers, and especially teenager girls, have become the group vulnerable to HIV. According to the Joint United Nations programs on HIV/AIDS, AIDS is the second leading cause of death among adolescents globally. There are 4,000 new HIV infections every day worldwide, 51% of which are in adolescents aged 15 to 24 years. Every week, around 5,000 young women aged 15 to 24 years become infected with HIV. 6 out of 7 new HIV infections among adolescents in sub-Saharan Africa are in the teenager girls. A precious life dies from AIDS every minute. In order to end the AIDS epidemic, prevention is an important link that needs to be strengthened. Universal sex education and humanistic education are the most important means of preventing AIDS, as well as the most economic and effective social vaccine. All adolescents have the right to access information and services to protect themselves from HIV. As one of the social forces fighting AIDS in China, Beijing Changer Education Foundation has built Changer service station halls in schools and communities to carry out sex education and humanistic education activities, curb the spread of AIDS upstream, and block its transmission channels. The foundation has explored the social vaccine of sex education for AIDS prevention, which has been widely used in more than 1,000 schools and communities in 28 cities and provinces in China, and directly benefited people for 30 million person times. The social vaccine has been highly recognized by the Chinese government and UNAIDS. On World AIDS Day 2021, Beijing Changer Education Foundation and Chinese Government Department jointly launched the campaign of sex education and humanistic education to end AIDS. In the next 5 years, we will popularize and promote knowledge of AIDS prevention and treatment nationwide to ensure that more adolescents grow up free from sex assault and discrimination, have access to HIV testing, HIV prevention and treatment program, and sexual and reproductive health service, and truly enjoy their rights to life and health. Furthermore, we hope to conduct planned, step-by-step, focused, and targeted exchanges and cooperation with UN agencies and other international organizations, so as to contribute wisdom and strength to realizing the global goal of ending AIDS, as schedule and promote the protection of the rights and interests of women and children worldwide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ying-Jun. So now we're moving on to the Q&A session. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A. If you'd like to ask a question of our guest speaker, please post your question in the chat. Thank you. I'll give a couple minutes for question. And Emma will take over the Q&A if there's any question.我们现在大约有10分钟的问答时间如果你想向我们的嘉宾提问，也可以把您的问题发在聊天框里边。感谢。
So, I have a question. Can I be heard? I have a question for Ms. Zhang. And first of all, I'm very happy to listen to your remarks and get very much inspired by what you said. My question is, in Eastern culture, people are shy to talk about the sex issue. So how did you overcome this obstacle and make sex education for Chinese teenagers so effective?
好的，这个问题呢，谢谢你的问题。这个问题是说东方的文化向来羞于谈论性的问题，你们是如何克服这一障碍，把中国青少年性教育开展的如此卓有成效？张理事长。
你好，我来回答这个问题吧。因为这个亲爱工程和亲爱教育基金会是我发起创立的，那时候我还在国家卫生部门工作，当时看到了很多女孩子因为缺少性教育而导致了很多的伤害，因为我也作为一个母亲看到这种伤害不忍心。
I found Chinese AIDS at the time, China AIDS Youth Center. Now it's a Chinese Education Foundation. Because of my work experience in China's health sector, I saw some young Chinese women suffering from physical and psychological harm because of lack of sex education.
因为看到了这种伤害，所以我觉得性教育的重要性必须要在学校、社区把这个课程要送到他们的身边去。所以呢，我就下决心成立这个亲爱工程和亲爱教育基金会。10多年来，就是我们在不停的进行政策倡导，包括进行各种通过各种渠道进行宣传。也得到了越来越多的爱心人士，包括爱心人士的企业，还有政府的各个部门的支持，包括联合国艾滋病规划署的认可和支持。
As a mother, I felt for them, for those young women. So I decided to establish a social organization to bring sexual education to schools and communities. For more than 10 years, we have consistently made policy appeals. As a result, we have received more and more support from caring people, corporate donations, and the government. And we also getting support from UNAIDS. Thank you for the question. 谢谢你的问题。
Yeah, we also have one more question. Director General Zhang, could you explain to us the specific meaning of social vaccine for AIDS prevention and treatment? Emma, maybe you can translate that one into Chinese.
Thank you. 第二个问题是张理事长能不能介绍一下艾滋病防治所谓的这个社会疫苗的具体含义？谢谢。
这个社会疫苗呢，它具体的就是，其实，在艾滋病的防控的策略中，宣传教育是最首要的手段，也是最经济、最有效的这个疫苗。好
，Education, yeah, thank you. Education is the first and most important tools in the AIDS prevention and control strategy. And it's also the most economical and effective social vaccine.
所以北京亲爱教育基金会呢，就是通过宣传教育，促进青少年主动学习防艾的知识，怎么样学习保护自己。所以我们说在上游拧上水龙头，就阻断艾滋病的传播渠道。
Through education, Beijing Chinese Education Foundation promotes youth to learn about AIDS prevention, to protect themselves, to proactively stop AIDS transmission at the beginning and prevent its downstream effect. Thank you. 谢谢.
We also received one more question to General Zhang. Director Zhang, could you give us a brief description of what the foundation has done to prevent and treat AIDS for young people? Yeah.
I think this question is for Mandu, I believe.
No, Tracy question above.
Okay, got it. Okay. 下一个问题就是想问一下，这个基金会在这个青少年艾滋病防治方面做了哪些工作？
哦，那这个问题还是我来回答哈，就是在艾滋病防治方面，我们做的哪些工作呢？就是我们在积极的，首先是因为在16、17年前。我在开展艾滋病防治，也就是艾滋病防治，大家知道98%以上是性传播。那在做这个政策的时候，当时的政策呀，包括大家的观念的认知啊，还都不到位，所以我们主要是进行积极的政策倡导，推动政府出台政策。请艾玛先翻译这一段。
Okay, so first. 16 or 17 years ago, when I founded China AIDS, the Youth AIDS Center, 98% of the AIDS is through sexual transmission. So that's why I actively advocate for policies and promote government policies.
好，
谢谢。
那第二个方面呢，我们是在学校里设立亲爱小屋，就是积极的提供他这个开展青少年接受教育和活动的一个场所。
Second, in schools, we set up our love care cottage, so to provide and as a place to carry out youth AIDS prevention activities and trainings.
第三个方面就是需要对老师进行专业的培训，提升他们在防艾和性教育方面的专业技能。
Third, conducting teacher training to improve teachers' professional skills in terms of providing sexual education.
第四个方面呢，就是我们面向家长群体，来开展这种防艾知识的宣传。也就是我们中国人通常说的家长课堂。
Fourth, conducting parents classes to educate parents about AIDS prevention is traditionally we call it parents class.
第五个方面，我们就出版了系列的教学的读物，包括开发视频课程呐，建立课程体系，出版学生、老师、家长的读本。
Fifth, publish teaching materials, developing video classes, video courses, and establish a curriculum system to developing the books for students, teachers, and parents.
第六个方面呢，我们同时还资助因受艾滋病影响的家庭的儿童，确保他们能完成学业。艾滋病影响的家庭呢，比如说有的孩子是因为父母感染了艾滋病，丧失了劳动能力，有的是孩子本身，学生本身是感染者，我们长期的去资助他们完成这个正常的学业。
Six, we provide financial support to students in need who are affected by AIDS to ensure that they complete their education. The children affected by AIDS, they will be getting the financial assistance from our organization.
好，谢谢，没有了。
Thank you.
Yes, and one more question from our audience to Joseph Mandu. Yeah, Also, as a developing country, what experience do you have in protecting young people from AIDS? Thank you.
Okay, thank you
这个
for
问题，sorry，这个问题是给门杜的。门杜先
Yeah,
生。
Mendu, yes. Mendu is ready to answer.
Yeah. 我想翻译一下。这个问题是给门杜先生的。作为发展中国家，你们在保护青少年、远离艾滋病方面有哪些成功的经验？谢谢。
Okay, thank you for the question. I will speak. I will take the case of Cameroon. For example, I personally noticed that the AIDS issues, except all of the many challenges that all of us have been, pointing out, it's also psychological. It's also a psychological issue whereby not only the young people and all the affected people believe that once you're infected, you lose everything. So you just wait, for a time. So on a personal basis, I used to volunteer. There is an organization that is called 100% Youth and 100% Life Without AIDS. That is actually through welfare. Us with the team, we're actually contributing in giving back. Giving them back the joy to live. Through activities, social activities, interaction, making them feel that okay, there is no difference. They still have a lot of ambitions. They still have a long way to go. As we just mentioned, there are also some drugs that they can also take on a currently basis. So literally making them have the joy to live and keep their motivation, because those were the two issues. And also, of course, Ms. Zhang also mentioned the same. Through that association and even other organizations throughout Africa, we actually worked on a publication on social medias, podcasts, and campaigns among the young people, so as to raise awareness of the danger of the AIDS, as well as workshop. So generally speaking, involving everyone into this kind of networking discussion, making no difference, because there is a psychological issue involved. It doesn't matter if you're infected, but you are still a human being. You still have a motivation. You're still going to school. You still have the right to education, etc., and right to a lot of social facilities. That's actually what the foundation that I used to volunteer before coming to China, used to do. Thank you.
Mandu, I know you can speak Chinese. Do you want to take an answer for yourself, or I stick to the notes and you want me to do it?
And just summarized, 基本上是我就是做了很多的公益啊，做志愿者。因为以喀麦隆为例，国别哈，我们有一个就是防艾的这么一个NGO， 也就是说主要是心理，就是所有的已经感染上这个艾滋病的一些心理方面的，给他们的一些心理方面的支持。因为很多的一些趋势是他感染了这个艾滋病，他就是只等死，他对生活没有什么兴趣了。但是呢，这个 NGO 呢，是我去做公益的时候，就是说我们跟一些已经感染了艾滋病，去跟他们沟通，去告诉他们这个生活还有意义，得活下去。他们还有一些，比如说有什么想法，他们还有什么梦想，都可以实现的。然后第二方面呢，当然是教育啊，当然理事长也刚提出了，也一样，各国家世界各地是一样的。然后包括在 NGO 呢，我们也大量的在这个社交媒体去一些发提示不管是染上还是处于这种正常的状态，还是得以谨慎为妙。但是呢，不要排斥，不要故意的比如说已经染上艾滋病，比如说让他们感觉他们是不一样的。所以就是不仅仅在喀麦隆，还是在非洲，就是普遍现象谢谢。
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Ollie,
so
I think
much.
you have one more question.
Yeah, one more question. I guess we can take question about civil societies, civil organizations. Yeah, how Chinese civil society organizations can help developing countries to end AIDS epidemic.
这个问题是请问中国民间社会组织是否有帮助发展中国家如期实现终结艾滋病流行的意愿？准备如何帮助？
好，那这个问题还是我来回答吧。是这样，就是北京亲爱教育基金会，因为这个非常的愿意帮助发展中国家开展青少年艾滋病防治的工作，就像刚才门度讲到的啊，门度的中文也非常棒啊。比如在卡麦隆有这样的防艾的社会组织，我们非常愿意跟他们开展合作。好，请艾玛帮我翻译。
Beijing Chinese Education Foundation is very willing to help developing countries in their youth AIDS prevention and treatment effort, and this work is underway. Mendu Joseph, he is very good with his Chinese as well, and I think he's definitely a very active member in all the organizations, NGOs, helping to fight AIDS in developing countries.
那这项工作呢，我们也正在进行中。就是我们亲爱基金会，这些年在中国卫健委、中国教育部和中国疾控中心的指导下呢，我们历时2年录制完成的学校防艾和性教育的视频课程，也进行了英文的翻译。好，请艾玛来讲。
Yeah, the effort is underway under the guidance of Chinese Health and Welfare Commission, the Ministry of Education, and the Chinese Disease Control and Prevention. Our foundation has spent 2 years recording the curriculums on AIDS prevention and sex education in schools, which has been translated into English. Hello? I think we lost. Sorry, I think we lost her.
Emma, while we are waiting for Zhang Yinjun, maybe we can take the next question.
Okay.
And the next question is for Wang Xiaoyu, for Emily. As a teenager, how would you let the school or company use some of your suggestions?
下一个问题是给我们的发言嘉宾王小雨。我们的青少年嘉宾王小雨。作为青少年，你是如何？刚才您在这个演讲中提到了，就是给学校跟公司的一些建议，但是你是如何将会如何用你的方法来促进他们来帮助你？
First of all, this is a really good question. I think especially when like reforms or ideas for reform come from youth or like minors, it's difficult for them to be taken seriously. But I think one way to show schools and communities that you want to take this seriously and that like you're willing to put in the effort is to like show commitment. Like one of the suggestions that I had for maybe like combating the HIV and AIDS pandemic was to basically like form student-led committees or clubs that are willing to educate like other like fellow peers in small forums. I think even if you just start small and like gather like just a couple of students outside of classes or like sex ed classes, it will show your commitment. And I think if that is continued, schools will see just how effective it is. And from there, they will like support students further with these committees and work together to like carry out more of the solutions that I mentioned.
Okay. I know you're very good with your Chinese as well. Do you want to explain it in Chinese, or I do take the notes, or you want me to do it?
I think your translation is probably a bit more professional.
Okay, thank you. 刚才王小雨小姐的回答就是说，作为青少年，他会推动这个改革。虽然这个社会上对来自于这个青少年的这个改革的建议可能不会那么的重视，但是呢，作为我们这个青少年，我们的这个建议也代表了我们有这样的意愿。拿这些意愿来这个终结这个艾滋病跟防治艾滋病，终结艾滋病。刚才王小雨小姐在她的这个发言稿中建议了，就是在学校建立这个防治艾滋病的这个俱乐部。从一个小小的俱乐部开始，从每一个小小的点点滴滴开始，继续的不断推进。当我们有了这个进展的时候，当学校看到有结果的时候，他们就会更愿意帮助我们推进这个改革。谢谢。
Thank you, Emma. I think that's around our time. And how about I wrap up? And thank you so much for joining today's parallel event sponsored by Beijing Change Your Education Foundation. We hope you have come away from this event inspired by the strategy to end AIDS epidemic. Let's work together and make changes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
还有一个问题没有说完，艾玛，就是我刚才还有个问题没有说完，就是我们进行的时候，就是去年2021年，我们就向非洲的驻华大使夫人协会捐赠了我们的视频课程20万元的视频课程，支持在非洲国家开展青少年的艾滋病防治工作。这一点刚才我说的可能没听到。
Okay. In 2021, we donated about 200,000 RMB to the Association of African Ambassador Wives in China to support youth AIDS prevention work in African countries.
我们也非常欢迎各个国家有需要的，发展国家有需要跟我们合作的，可以跟我们联系。
Welcome any countries that you are in need of anti-AIDS help and support. Please contact us. Ming, before we ending, can I just show one slide to show you our contact information? So you can email us, you can call us, you can visit our website, and those are our contact information. You can take a picture of this. Thank you. Now it's over back to the Renxin. Okay, so back to our chairman, the chairwoman's on. 那理事长，您在最后结束一下。
好，非常感谢啊，非常感谢大家今天这个参会，也非常感谢艾玛带着这个在纽约的联合国的组织的志愿者们一起来服务，包括这个做这个后勤工作的、做翻译的，包括我们做视频的这些志愿者，非常感谢大家，也非常感谢陈红、文柱、运鑫。这很多嘉宾哈维一起来参与来做分享你们的经验，非常感谢大家。今天的会议刚刚这个时间刚好，非常的圆满，谢谢，非常感谢，辛苦大家了。
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the team from United States, and thank you the team from China. We have our volunteers from Johns Hopkins University, and they are work around the clock for being an interpreter for this event. Thank you so very much. And we also thanks the team from China making those videos. And we also thank our guest speakers, Joseph, Dr. Harvey, and Cheng Hong, and also Emily Wan, and our moderators, Ali and Du Xing. And thank you so very much. Without you guys, we will not be this successful. Thank you.
期待着这个疫情尽快结束，我们明年的这个世界妇女大会，能在纽约去相见。
We wish this COVID will ending soon, and we will see you all next year in New York. Thank you.